Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever just struggled to find your life purpose or figure out what you wanted to do in this world to live an inspired, fulfilling life, then do we have the Purposeful Show for you. If you've ever watched The Secret, then you know our next guest. Today I'll be talking with Dr. John Demartini, a leading authority on human behavior and personal development, and the author of 40 books published in over 29 different languages, and the author of a new favorite of mine, The Values Factor, the secret to creating an inspired and fulfilling life. And that's what we'll be talking about today, uncovering who you really are, what makes you tick, and what your true purpose is, the one that brings you greatest happiness and success, and that's in perfect alignment with your values. That plus we'll talk about vim and vigor, the dangers of wood rose seeds, learning to read at 18, why Paul Bragg's was more than just a vinegar, and what in the world to be TV watching learning disabled really means. So welcome to the show, Dr. Demartini. Are you ready to shine?
Yeah, I am. That's great.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show, and a mighty woohoo! So I've got to ask, before we dive right into things, how did it feel at age 4 when you got your arm and leg braces off?
Well, after watching all the other young children play and have fun and be free to run around whatever they wanted to go, the day I did, I literally ran through my house. I ran outdoors around the house. I ran down the street. I did everything I could to prove to my dad that I could keep my arm and leg straight. So that was a very inspiring day. I guess I've been on the run ever since. I travel full time. The constraint as a child made me want to be a free man. So I think that was a great gift, but it was also a challenge at the time. But age 4 was a liberty.
So, and I love that you actually told your dad, it was a negotiation, if I understand this right. Dad, I promise to keep my arms and legs straight if you'll let me free.
Exactly. He said, I have to put you back in those braces if you don't. And he was true. I mean, I understood why, but I didn't want to go back there. So I made it a point to prove that I could keep my arm and leg straight.
Woo! So going from there, I think we share a similarity in our past. At my mom's first parent-teacher conference, Mrs. Fisher, a teacher of, like 32 years of experience, told my mom I was the worst student they had ever had. What did they tell your mom?
Well, I was in a little reading circle, and I was probably right at 7, just turned 7. And my mom and dad were asked to come to the class. So the Mrs. McLaughlin, who was an older woman, could tell them the results. And she said to my parents and me, sitting there right next to them in this little reading circle, these little chairs, that I'm afraid your son has got learning problems. I'm afraid he'll never be able to read or write or communicate, never amount to the thing, never go very far in life. If I were you, I would put him into some sort of sport because he likes to run. Because I've been running ever since I got out of the braces. And so I used to run. So he said, put him into sports because that's about the only place he's going to excel. And that was a true statement. I knew it was true because I did have to sit with a dunce cap on and face the window because I couldn't read and couldn't write. But at the same time, I felt there was a pain and a pleasure because I thought, okay, well, they're now going to encourage me to do what I want to do, which is sports. But it was also, I realized I was a dummy. I didn't really believe I was ever going to be able to read or be intelligent until I turned 18.
So, and at 14, you dropped out of school then?
Well, I left home right at 13, before 14. It was about September, the year when I was 13, about 2.5 months before I turned 14, I left home. And I started living on the streets. I lived in a bowling alley. I lived in a park. I lived in people's homes. I lived wherever I could. And 14, I ended up hitchhiking out to California and through Mexico. And I was a surf buff.
Yeah.
And then eventually made it to Hawaii as a surf guy. And I was a street kid for teens.
How were you as a surfer?
Well, I didn't get into the top 10, but I was in probably the next tier. I rode big waves. I have some pictures of riding 40-foot waves. So I got to ride some big waves. I got to meet all the great surfers from Jerry Lopez to Ben Ipa to Jock Sutherland to Al Chapman. I mean, all the guys at those days that were big. And they all lived right just down the road from me, where I was living at Eokai Beach Park on the North Shore of Oahu by then.
Oh, beautiful.
And yeah, I got to watch them surf and become friends with some of them. And we surfed, and my life was surfing until I nearly died at 17, 18 years old.
So I want to ask you about that, but having lived the last 4 years in Maui, my wife and myself, and watching them surf Jaws, what did that had to help you? That had to rewire your mind in many ways to do the work you're doing now.
Well, I saw a fun correlation in all of my journey, actually. I use diagrams in my teachings today that represent cones and conical sections to teach principles. And when I was surfing, if you look at it from the side, it's a tube that is the shape of a cone. If you look at a baseball diamond, which I played baseball, it was the shape of a cone.
Yeah.
I think the cone that I stuck in my head that was a dunce cap had something to do with what I do. Everything had to relate to a cone. And I don't know if that's true, but it just happens to be an interesting combination. But no, it all has an impact. I mean, surfing was about being in the center, about being balanced. And it's about riding the ups and downs and trying to get yourself in the center where you're most efficient. And all of my teachings today are about being in the center and not allowing yourself to get too elated in fantasy and too depressed, and to try to get yourself authentic, not exaggerating or minimizing yourself. So yeah, surfing had a major philosophical impact on my life.
Beautiful. So going from there, I can't believe a woman saved you. This is pretty amazing. How did that happen, that she saved you and she dragged you to vim and vigor and got you rehydrated? It sounds like you were on death's doorstep living on the beaches.
Well, I was living in a jungle near Haleiwa Point at that moment. And I had a combination of a tent that was getting raggedy and kind of a palm leaf Tarzan place. Yeah. And I was surfing Laniakea, which is a big right. And my whole right side of my body and my diaphragm stopped. It just went into spasm, and my diaphragm stopped. When you're riding a 40-foot wave and all of a sudden your diaphragm stops, that's a pretty scary moment. I thought that was going to be the end of it. And luckily, I went over the falls on this wave 3 times. I mean, it just takes you, and you're at its mercy, kind of thing. And luckily, I got up and I caught up just enough air to be able to go back down, and my diaphragm released, and I came up all beaten up on the rocks. And I went into Haleiwa, which I hitchhiked into Haleiwa from there. My board was all smashed. I went into Haleiwa, went into this IGA supermarket, and went for a container of buttermilk. I never drank buttermilk in my whole life, but I had this yearning for buttermilk. And I started drinking it, guzzling it, and I walked out of the place, and I started getting really dizzy, and I passed out in the parking lot. And 3.5 days later, I found myself face down in my tent, really cathartic. I mean, it was a mess in the tent. I had been sick, and I'd been unconscious for 3.5 days. And I was moaning, I guess, and the lady, where my tent was close to a little kind of a pathway. And there's enough off where you couldn't see it, but I guess you could hear it from there. And this lady happened to be walking down the path and heard me making noise, and she came through the jungle and found me in the tent. And she said, "Oh my God, you're dehydrated." And she ran off and got this mixture of passion fruit juice and orange juice and grapefruit juice, and came in there and started to get some fluids in me and helped clean up the tent. And I was so weak and so dehydrated that I don't know if I would have had the energy to get up. If it wasn't for her, I might not be here. And she helped me recover for the next few days, and enough where I had enough energy. And she helped me walk over to a health food store and got carrot juice in me. It's the only thing I could keep in my stomach. And I got carrot juice in me, and she started to feed me and got me into starting to think of natural foods and healthy foods and eating wiser. And leaving that health food store one day, I saw a little flyer on the door that said special guest speaker Paul C. Bragg, Sunset Recreation Hall, 7:30 Wednesday night, North Shore. And I never went to classes. I mean, the only thing I would even look that would even remotely look like learning was looking at magazines with girls on it or surfer magazines. But something intuitively said to go meet this guy. He was an interesting picture of the guy. And I went there one night, And I listened to him lecture. And I'm telling you, that one man in 1 hour with his one message, that one night, got to me. And that was the first night in my life that I actually thought maybe I could learn to read and be intelligent and do something with my life. I had a desire to do it, but I never believed it was possible. But that was the night my life changed. That was the night that I made a decision to do what I do today.
Was there one, it's hard going all the way back to it, but is there one particular spark or something that you latched onto that lit the flame?
Well, he basically said that we have a body, we have a mind, and we have a soul. Mm-hmm. And the body must be directed by the mind must be directed by the soul if you want to maximize your human potential. And he says that whatever you see for yourself, whatever you think for yourself, whatever you talk to yourself about, whatever you feel for yourself about, if it's inspiring to you, if it's meaningful to you, it can become your reality. Nobody ever talked to me like that. I was just told I would never read, write, or communicate kind of stuff. And that was the night that I saw a vision, which has been painted by a famous artist now, and it sits in my office. It's a vast, big painting. And it's a painting of me standing out on a balcony about 40 feet up, overlooking a giant square with 1 million people in it, with my hands like this, speaking. And it was probably a dissociative identity disorder at the time, because I was probably, disempowered, but I probably fantasized. But I saw a vision of me speaking and making a speech to people and inspiring people. And that vision has been with me ever since. And I have that vision literally on my computer. And that I've used that to be the model of what I want to do across the world. So that night I saw a vision of what I want to do, and I've been working on it ever since.
That also happens to be, in a strange way, a cone. Because if you were on Skype and you went over to notifications, it has a giant megaphone that is a cone blasting out your voice to the world.
Well, it's true, because I think a cone had something to do with my life. I think it just has a significance. I use it in all my diagrams for explaining and teaching things. I guess I'm the original conehead or something. I don't know.
Oh, no. When I came out, they used tongs. I was a real conehead, too.
Well, you probably have, you wanted to probably go to the island of Tonga or something because of that.
Oh, no.
That joke.
Okay, so let's go from there. Let's talk about values and what values really are, because you talk about, well, clearly, the values factor, but I think we all have it backwards as to what values are and what the real importance is.
Well, every individual, regardless of race, creed, color, age, sex, whatever, lives by a set of priorities, a set of values, which are the things that are most important to least important in their life. I call it a hierarchy of values.
Yeah.
And these values are based on voids. So if you perceive you don't have a relationship, you now have a value on finding a relationship. You feel you have money, don't have money, you now have a value on finding money.
Or the example you used earlier, you didn't have the freedom to run, and so you placed a huge value on running and travel.
I full-time travel. I even live on a ship called the World that goes around the world, so I'm never sitting still. Wow. So I'm either in a country traveling or I'm on my ship traveling, and it full-time travels around the world. So I'm often on my ship, and then I'm flying. So no matter what I'm doing, I'm up in space or I'm flying on the ocean. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that void determines the values. And then I was told I would never read, write, or communicate, never amount to anything, never go very far in life. So now I'm right at the 30,000 book mark. I've written probably 300 books. Mm-hmm. I've traveled 17 million miles. I've reached 3.5 billion people in one form or another, media or books or movies or whatever. And I'm a multimillionaire, financially independent. So all the things that I was told I would never do, I ended up making sure I did. So those voids impact your values. And, the only thing I haven't gotten is I want to be an international sex symbol with the Victoria's Secret models. That one hasn't come true yet. I'm joking.
Well,
but that's still to be seen.
You never know.
Never know.
And you've got the fashion sense for it. So,
well, we have a fashion company. I'm wearing Demartini fashion right as we speak.
Oh, you are? I love it. I love it. And I was commenting off air before, love the tie. I worked in the fashion industry briefly years ago. So while you're seeing me in this kind of scruffy blue button down, I got the eye and you got it.
Yeah.
So what I take away, one of the huge takeaways out of this, and we want to jump into what values really mean, but for everybody listening to this is, in a sense, to celebrate your voids, because your voids are going to be what makes you.
Yes, your whatever's most missing in your life and your perceptions becomes most valuable in your life. And so you give yourself permission to go and fulfill what the word fulfillment means, filling full the mind of what is perceived empty or missing. Now, ultimately, nothing's missing, but it's all perceptual. But the reality is that we think it's missing, therefore we seek it.
So the trick, in a sense, then, is to focus on filling it rather than focus on the fact that the void is there.
Exactly. If you don't fill your day with high priority actions and inspire you, it will fill up with low priority distractions that don't. And if you don't prioritize your life and don't define what is really most important to you, you'll be infiltrated by other people's expectations of what they think is important for you. And so you have to say no to the outer world and say yes to the inner vision.
How do we start to get clear? And I think this is the biggest question for people today is, how do we start to get clear of what that inner vision is, or I hate using the word should, but should look like?
Well, I don't use the word imperatives. Anytime you use a should, a ought to, a supposed to, a got to, a have to, or a must, it's usually an injected value. You don't ever should yourself. You only should when you've injected some authority into your life telling you should. Mm-hmm. But what I do is I developed in my Values Factor book, and I've been doing it for, over 3 decades, almost 4 decades, a value determination process that I developed. And what it is, if you ask somebody what their values are, they usually tell you a bunch of social idealisms from individual authorities or collective authorities. Mm-hmm. But that's not what it is. What it is what your life demonstrates. So your life demonstrates your values every single day. My life demonstrates that I love researching, writing, traveling, and teaching because I do those 4 things every day. And my life does not demonstrate that I'm interested in cooking or driving because I haven't driven in 25 plus years, and I haven't cooked since I was 24 years old. And I'm going on 62 now, so you can get a sense for that. So those are not important to me. But if you look carefully at what a person fills their space with, mm-hmm. and what does it really represent in their life? If you look at mine, you see my computer, which is my researching and writing materials, yep. and teaching materials. You'll see here a bag of research materials. I don't know if you can see it.
Very nice, yep.
Another bag, and then I got my Toomey bags for traveling. Research, write, travel, teach is what my bags, what shows up in this hotel room. I'm in London, so whatever.
Any running shoes?
I've got them, but I delegate that. But if you look at what you fill your space with, it tells you what's valuable to you. You look at how you spend your time and dominate your time. You always find time for things that are important to you, and you run out of time for things that don't. You look at what energizes you. When you're doing something high in your values, you have more energy at the end of the day than when you started. And when you're doing low value things, you get drained. Where you spend your money, because you always find money and make money for things that are really valuable to you. Where you're most organized, where you're most disciplined. What are you thinking about, visualizing, and affirming internally with your dialogue about how you want your life that's showing evidence of coming true? What do you converse with other people about most and wanting to keep the conversation keep going to? What is it that you are inspired by, or what's common to the people who inspire you? Mm-hmm. What is it that you have that's most persistent, consistent goals in your life that are coming true? And what do you love studying, reading about, learning about, and listening to about most? If you take those 13 determinants and answer the top 3 answers for each one of those, you'll get a 39 answer summary. And then you look at for which one of those answers repeated most, because it'll be the same answers or synonyms repeating. And you look at which one showed up most frequent, second most frequent, third most frequent, etc. And you'll end up with a hierarchy of values, and that's what your life is demonstrating. Not what you fantasize, not what you think it should be, not what it used to be, but what it is today. It's so important to get grounded on what it is really important, mm-hmm. and to start structuring your life and building a foundation of your life around what's really valuable. Because if you don't fill your day with things that inspire you, it's going to fill up with things that don't. And you can't live an inspired life doing lower priority, desperate things. You've got to learn to delegate lower priority things, get on with higher priority things, produce an income so you can afford to delegate, and free yourself out and make a difference and serve people.
I love it. I love it all. I want to back up to one small piece of it. Let's say we're looking at how we're spending our time. You said, Phil, answer the 3 questions, or that there are 3 pieces you want to write down from your time, your energy, your money, your personal space. What is the three things we're filling down?
You're writing down the three top answers.
Okay.
What are the three most important things you fill your space with?
Mm-hmm.
What are the three things you spend most of your time on? So if you have 18 hours a day that you're awake, what is the number one thing you spend your time on? The second number one thing you spend your time on? The third one you spend most of your time on? It's eye-opening because you'll realize, oh my God, what I thought was important to me is usually my fantasies. What is important is another thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let me give you an example.
Sure.
If I ask people, millions of people I've asked around the world, how many of you want to be financially independent? They all put their hands up.
Yeah.
And I said, how many of you are? And they put their hands down, except a small percent. And I said, most people have a fantasy of living the lifestyles of the rich and famous, but they don't have the values of wealth building. And money circulates through the economy from those who value it least to those who value it most. And they wonder why they don't have wealth in their life, financial wealth, is because they don't really value that. They think they do. And it's so important to get clear about what is really valuable instead of the fantasies you think are valuable.
So let's take that one, for example. And I wanted to jump toward the end to wealth building, but we might as well go there just a little bit right now. Let's say that your life is not reflecting that money is that wealth building is your value system, yet you put a high priority on it, which puts you in conflict. How do we then get those back into alignment?
Well, if you have a higher value on buying depreciables and consumables and spending your money on the lifestyle instead of actually saving it and investing it and buying assets that work on your behalf,
mm-hmm.
You're not going to get wealthy.
You talk about the lifestyle has to come second.
Well, no, the lifestyle has to be earned methodically.
Okay.
There's a difference. I have a pretty amazing lifestyle. I travel the world. I do amazing things. I go to premieres of movies. I hang out with some amazing people. But what I did is I did that incrementally. I earned the right to have the lifestyle that I wanted instead of expending the lifestyle and never having my money work for me.
Mm-hmm.
So some people live beyond their means and they don't serve enough people to live that lifestyle, and then they erode their potential for building wealth to have that lifestyle.
Can you define for us appreciables then versus depreciables?
Well, appreciable is something that puts money in your pocket. Depreciables are things that take money out of your pocket, bottom line.
People talk about...
If you buy a suit, for instance, this suit,
mm-hmm.
if I can turn that suit in sales into a productive item, that's an appreciable.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm using it and just socializing with it and I'm not returning any investment on it, then it's a depreciable. So I don't like to put my money into anything that's not going to return an investment. If I don't get a return on investment, I select my expenditures accordingly. So immediate gratification costs you wealth, long-term vision pays. So you ask, over the long term, is buying this actually going to be the greatest advantage that's going to produce in the results that I want in my life?
Mm-hmm.
If so, I buy it. But if it's just immediate gratification because I need a little addiction and I live vicariously through other people's brands to feel good about myself because I'm not having meaning because I'm not doing what's high in my values, then it actually is a cost. And you're buying things that go down in value. If you buy a Tiffany's ring, don't tell any women if they're watching on this though. If you buy a Tiffany's ring, the second you walk out of the building, a $250,000 ring is now $125,000 the moment you walk out that building. But if you go buy a $250,000 condominium
mm-hmm.
and you rent it out, the $250,000 10 years later is now $700,000 or $600,000 when you add up all the rent and everything. So it's about what you buy. If you want something that's a flashy immediate gratifier, you're probably going to pay. If you want something that's a methodical asset builder, it's going to be a patient process.
Going from there, to talk about back in your 20s, you understood Parkinsons Law and savings. Can you explain that to us?
Well, I didn't really. It wasn't until I was about 28 that I really got savvy about wealth building. Most of the time, whenever I would save money, it was to buy a surfboard, to go on a trip, to buy a car, to buy something. These were all depreciables, most of them. It wasn't until 28 that I finally realized that I'm going to start saving to build wealth. And I'm going to have my money working for me. And I'm not going to erode it. I'm not going to spend it on anything. I'm just going to let it work. Mm-hmm. I bought some stocks when I was 28 years old. This goes back 34 years now. And bought stocks that I've never sold. So this is a long-term patience. And bought stocks. I started buying an index fund back then, 34 years ago. Mm-hmm. I put millions of dollars into that thing, and that's made me millions of dollars. And so I bought companies that served people, that were needed, that made a difference, that employed people, that helped the economy. that contributed to society. I've just bought and kept buying quality investments in stock, and it is now paying me. It's working on my behalf. And to me, that was when I finally realized that I want money working for me. I want to be its master. I don't want to be working for it and be its slave.
I like that very much. And going back to the investing, you talk about in the book when you're in your 20s and you didn't, quote unquote, have the money to invest, you still found a way to put a little bit of it aside. I'm thinking of this book, The Last Rich Man in Babylon or something like that.
The Richest Man in Babylon,
Thank
yes.
you. That you found a way to put it aside, assuming that vacuum that was created, the money would come in so that you would make ends meet, but at least you've started savings.
Well, I started out with $1 an hour, $10 a day, $50 a week, $200 a month savings. Mm-hmm. And I was a little anxious because I didn't think I could afford it because I was behind on my bills. I had loans to do. I had a new house. I had a new car. I had all this stuff that I thought was going to be, put me in a better position in front of people. Mm-hmm. And I realized it was all just fluff because it was running my life. And I said, I'm buying this stuff for my family and everything else, but what about my future? And so I basically decided I would start with whatever I felt I was comfortable with. And I did that for 3 months. And I accumulated $600 plus about 60 cents. And then I decided I didn't miss it. My business didn't miss it. Mm-hmm. So I raised it to 300, and I did that for 3 months, and I didn't miss it. It seemed like an extra patient came in and an extra people bought me lunch, and weird stuff happened to make it where I didn't miss it. And then I raised it to 500, and the same thing happened. And I raised it to 750, and then I raised it to 1,000. Every 3 months, I kept raising it. And at the end, once I developed a habit of 90 days, I just figured I've got it. I don't feel stressed by it. Let's try raising and pushing it a little further. Because maximum growth and development occurs at the border of comfort and uncomfort. If you don't make yourself a little uncomfortable and push yourself, you probably won't get best results. So when I hit $1,000 a month, I ran a projection of where I would be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years in the future. And I realized, I'll be a millionaire someday when I'm this age now. Mm-hmm. But I didn't stop there. I just kept increasing it 10% every quarter. So if you do that, it makes up a Pascal triangle. So it goes to 1,000 to 1,010. Then it goes to 1,210. Then it goes to 1,003,443 and 1,046,46, that kind of thing. And it goes up a Pascal's triangle. It increases. And every 2 years, it doubles. So 2 years later, I was saving 2,000. 2 years later, I was saving 4,000, 8,000, 16,000, 32,000, 64. I went up to $128,000 a month. And I kept saving it by methodically increasing it. And more business came to me, and my brand kept building, and more products and services came, and more opportunities and movies. And everything started flourishing because I was valuing me, and I was valuing serving people, and I was committed to serving people and valuing me and having a balance between the altruistic give and the narcissistic take, and had a nice equity. And I was investing in equities and buying properties and learning how to invest as I went along incrementally. And all of a sudden, what I took 34 years that I thought I was going to be a millionaire, I was saving more than $1 million a year doing that. And my money for my investments were making me $1 million a year. So I started having a different life. And I didn't raise my lifestyle initially. I kept my lifestyle simple. Mm-hmm. But what I did is I allowed myself to raise my lifestyle whenever I would raise my savings and taxes equal amounts. That was my law. Never raise your lifestyle unless you're willing to raise your savings and taxes equal amounts, or you move away from financial independence instead of towards it. And I did that, and now I have pretty well whatever lifestyle I kind of want. But at the same time, I'm not eroding any of my wealth. My wealth is growing faster. So I found that the patient, methodical, longer-term vision is a rewarding outcome. And so many of my friends that wanted to gamble on it and get quick rich, or quick fast, that kind of stuff, they're still up and down, and they never got where they wanted to go.
Talking about friends for a minute, and then I want to jump into challenges, and we'll go back to values and challenges and what you said a minute ago about being on that edge, which is, you talk about in the book, building wealth creates opportunities. In other words, people who have $10 hang out with the, what did you call them?
Tenaires.
The tenaires. and then they're the hundredaires and so forth. And so having that money also puts you with people who are resonating at that same frequency, because money is just energy, which avails you to amazing new opportunities.
Exactly. Well, if you want to, my wife and I, many years ago, we realized that the people we hung out with had an impact on our life. So we decided to try to locate the most wealthiest, most influential place to live. Mm-hmm. So we found out it was Manhattan. We found out it was 56th and 5th Street,
okay,
which is the same building that Donald Trump lives in at the top. Mm-hmm. So we moved into Trump's building, the Trump Tower. We lived on the 62nd floor. We had Steven Spielberg on the right, Kenny Rogers across the hall, and the guy that owns Guess Jeans, founder of Guess Jeans, on the left, and us. And above us, we had Sophia Loren and Bruce Willis. And above that, we had Michael Jackson and Bruce Willis. And above that was the Donald. So we positioned ourselves in a building that was highly influential building. And that block was one of the wealthiest places in America at the time. Well, that year that we moved in there, we made more money than the cost of the purchase, extra. And then we decided to do that again later on, and right after 9/11 occurred, 2001, because of the 9/11, we moved on to the ship called the World. I've been on there now almost 15 years. And the wealth factor on that ship is even more condensed. There's more billionaires on this ship per person anywhere in the world. And so we positioned ourselves there. And again, the very first year, definitely the first 5 years particularly, we made more income than I had done my whole earlier life. So the people you hang out with and the people that you interact with does have an impact on your destiny. So you want to surround yourself with people that are doing extraordinary things if you want to have an extraordinary life. And, I think there's some wisdom in that. So I try to incrementally do that. I do it methodically and incrementally. And just keep raising the bar, raise the standards as often as possible, and keep asking, how can I serve greater numbers of people?
Mind-blowing. So
I got to share something. I met a guy when I was 20 years old. I met a guy named Ed Tullison. Mm-hmm. Now, this guy was amazing. And he impacted my life pretty extensively, like Paul Bragg did. He charged $1,000 for 100 audio cassette tapes, $10 a piece, mm-hmm. on how to live an entrepreneurial dream life. And what he did is once you paid this $1,000, you got the tapes, and then anywhere in the world that he happened to be in, you could hang out with him. And he would be in a city, one city for a day or two, and he'd go on to the next city. And he went all over the world, living in the high-rise suites of the finest hotels around the world and inspiring youth to become entrepreneurs. I modeled my life today. That's how I live my life today. Basically, that's how I do it. And he said one thing that really had an impact on me. He says, never live where you can't see the farthest horizon. I made sure that all my homes were up in the sky, mm-hmm. or in a jet, mm-hmm. or on a ship in the ocean. I made sure there was never anything that man made interfering with the vision, the farthest reaches of my vision to the farthest horizon.
Beautiful. And I really like, if I go back to what he did, something that's real important in there is talk about to serve and going above and beyond the call of duty. This is somebody who, I'm not going to sit down with you because I need to make another dollar from you. This is somebody who is putting himself out there, really trying to help. Well,
you can't fake that. People can see through facades. Mm-hmm. Eventually they see it. And if you don't really have a work ethic, if you don't feel like by divine providence and human sovereignty, you're here to serve vast numbers of people, it's kind of unrealistic to expect vast fortunes. You have to care enough about people to find out what their needs are and serve them directly or indirectly through your own service or through brokering somebody else's services. If you're not caring about people, it's fantasy to live prosperously, because you're withdrawing your own contribution, therefore withdrawing yourself from the contribution others will get back. So it's so important to really find the niche that you love doing, so you can't wait to get up in the morning and serve, so people can't wait to get that service.
How do challenges help serve us and help us to reach our highest purpose?
Well, if people support you and make everything easy, you stay juvenilely dependent on them and you get enabled and disabled and you don't really push yourself. It's the challenges in your life that actually make you become precociously independent. Mm-hmm. And if you're not filling your day with challenges that inspire you, it's going to fill up with challenges that don't. But either way, you're going to get either kicked in the butt to grow, or you're going to end up going after the challenges that inspire you to grow. It's wiser to do that one. So it's wise to go and find out what are the biggest problems that humanity faces and what is it I can do to go make a contribution to them, and then dedicate your life to serving greater numbers of people. If you serve a small group of people, you'll get a small reward. You serve a vast number of people, you'll get a vast reward. It's that simple, but we have to care enough about humanity to find out what humanity collectively is looking for.
Mm-hmm. What is telos or teleologically?
The teleology is the study of meaning and purpose. And it comes from the entelechy by Aristotle. He said that there was an inherent purpose in behavior in all life throughout the world. And he believed that the entelechy lived in all and animated all life itself and gave purpose and meaning to life. Some atheists and mechanistic scientists believe that there's no purpose. There's only teleonomics, which is through trial and error feedback systems that guide us into the future. But we have a forebrain, a prosencephalon, and a medial prefrontal cortex that's involved in inspired vision, for strategic planning, executing plans, and self-governance with foresight. That's what makes us different than the animals. And our foresight is the teleological part, the part where we can foresee the future and have meaning and purpose driving it. It's the thing that allowed Viktor Frankl to endure the concentration camps. It's the thing that allows a person to get up and be inspired to get up and do something amazing. Mm-hmm. So teleology, the study of meaning and purpose, I believe is a cornerstone of human maximizing potential.
What's the difference between inspiration and motivation? Because we have so many people that are looking for ways to get motivated.
Well, inspiration is from within. Mm-hmm. It's sometimes called internal motivation, but I prefer to call it inspiration. And motivation is from without. When somebody, people call me all the time in media, I get interviewed, they go, well, you're a motivational speaker. I'm not a motivational speaker. In Ireland the other day, I was speaking to a crowd there, and I got interviewed by Ray Darcy. And he says, well, Dr. Demartini, you're a motivational speaker. I said, stop right there. Mm-hmm. I am not a motivational speaker. He goes, you're not? And I said, no. A motivational speaker is somebody trying to persuade you with rhetoric to do what they want you to do. Mm-hmm. And an inspirational educator, an inspired educator like me, is trying to find out what you want to do and help you get there. Totally different entity. So I'm more involved in inspiration. And when you live by your highest values, if you set goals that are congruent with your highest values, you get inspired to do it. You spontaneously are inspired to do it. If you have to require any motivation or incentives or any gimmicks to get you to do what you say you want to do, what you say you want to do isn't it. I don't need motivation to get up and do what I do. You probably don't need motivation to go and do what you love doing today. You don't need motivation. Motivation for people that are uninspired mm-hmm. and are trying to live in other people's lives instead of living their own dream.
Well, it's sort of like going to, and it's a good topic to cover before the end, kids. When we say that kids aren't motivated and they're over at their video game, they're playing baseball, they're running down the street, they're doing whatever they do, they're highly inspired just by what drives them.
Well, the thing is parents with one set of value and teachers with one set of value project their values onto kids, and they label them uninspired and attention deficit and all these other crappy labels that have no meaning at all, except to ignorant teachers that don't know human behavior. But the reality is those kids always, every case I've worked with, I've dealt with thousands of kids, every case, they have something they're inspired to do. Mm-hmm. They're just not honored for doing them. And they're being shut down by people with a different set of values that are autocrats projecting expectations on them to be living in those values instead of the kid's natural talents. And all I know is that when the second you help a child find out what that natural talent is by observing them, mm-hmm. and then link the things you want the child to do to that, so it's the child doing it because they're inspired, because they can see how it's helping them get what they want. Children do extraordinary things.
So let's talk about that linking, both for children and adults, because I think that's a key to everything here. For instance, if you're saying, myself, got this show, worldwide show, and if I'm saying, I'm not bringing in the income that I desire yet, well then, my value is a higher value on the show than the income. I need to find a way to link to that income so that I see it as a way to help reach more people, for instance.
Well, if you ask the question, because one of the greatest questions in life is to ask, how is whatever I'm experiencing help me fulfill my mission, my highest value, my telos? So what you do is you ask, how is actually charging a fee, mm-hmm. Saving the money, investing the money, mm-hmm. how specifically is that going to help me reach more people? How is it going to help me provide better service? How is it going to help the client? That's the big one. How is it going to help the client? I asked that a long time ago whenever I wanted to raise my fees in my practice years ago, 30-something years ago. What is the benefit to the client of the new fee that I want to charge? And what is the drawback to the client of charging the old fee? And I did that, 100 benefits and 100 drawbacks, until my mind was completely shifted. And the next day, the new fee went into operation. No rebuttals. I got no new fee because it was me in my own blocking it. Once I reframed it, saw it, how it served people, changed the dynamic. And it also raised the standard of the clients that I got in my business.
I love that, and I think of coaching, which I'm not doing that much of these days because it's a 7-day-a-week show. But when I've been doing a lot of coaching, if I raise my rates, people put more value on it, and therefore they're going to be more committed to the outcome.
Exactly. They even showed in dentistry, 40 years ago or 50 years ago, they did a really interesting dental study, and they found out that the patients that got behind on their bills had more problems with their teeth than the people that kept current. Wow. And so they found out that the cavities that were being filled were pulling out. Things were running. There were snags because people felt unconsciously guilty that they didn't pay, and they did what they could to undermine it to resolve their own guilt about not paying. It was really interesting that they found this. So that's why the dentist made them have regular checkups and kept them current with their financial responsibilities for the sake of the actual outcome of the healing.
Fantastic. Real briefly, because we've got to move time-wise here. Talking about labeling or linking with kids, you talk about in the book a girl who loves barrel racing but wasn't doing well scholastically. And can you give an example of how you linked scholastics to barrel racing for her?
Well, this is a girl in Brisbane, Australia, I believe, and what she did is she just loved barrel racing. She just loved riding horses. That was her life. And she was great at it. So what we did is we took each of her classes, particularly the ones that she was having most difficulty with, and I showed her that the grades in the class were correlated with how well she could see those classes would help her in barrel racing. And if they were helping her in her mind, she wanted to go to the class and she wanted to engage in it, learn it. If she didn't want to go there, and she would go into short-term memory if she even got it at all. And so what I did is I linked each class to her barrel racing and her horsing, and language and even mathematics, because I explained to her, I said, if you become a great barrel racer and a great horse specialist like this, you're going to end up making money doing that, winning, and you're going to need to know how to manage your money. And so if you don't know how to manage the money, you don't know what the finances are, you don't know the mathematics of this, you won't be able to do it, and people will take advantage of you and take your money probably. And I just kept linking how each of her classes would help her in barrel racing until every one of them were linked. And her grades just skyrocketed. I've been doing this. I've been doing this now for thousands of kids. I mean, they gave me 14,000 teachers alone in South Africa to implement this with. And the results went from, we had one township in South Africa with 27% matric pass rate to 97 in 1 year.
Wow.
That means that we 4 times it, just literally almost 4 times the rate of passing school when we took all the classes and linked it to what the children's values were.
Woohoo! So going from there, and a huge congratulations and thank you, because that has a ripple effect on everyone. So a huge thank you on that. Couple quick wrap-up questions, see if there's time for an exercise. Personally, what brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
Well, I'm more of a thank you factor than a woohoo, but I like to call it fulfillment. But the thing that inspires me the most and brings the most fulfillment today is watching my students do extraordinary things. Tonight, I'm going to a premiere of a movie. It's one of my students that got inspired doing my program called the Breakthrough Experience, and created this production company, is now doing major movies and is doing it. And I'm getting invited there, and he's thanking me for this at this movie premiere. And watching my students go out and do something extraordinary with their life, and watching the light bulbs go on, and watch them get clear and concise about what their values are and what they're going to do and plan their life and master plan their life, that's probably the most fulfilling thing that you get as a teacher. And learning, anytime I'm researching and I'm learning another jigsaw piece, I like to think of the cosmos as a big puzzle, and every time I put another piece in there, I get inspired by it, and I want to share it with people. So anytime I get those two things, I get pretty inspired.
Beautiful. Do you mind if we ask who that student is, and where can people go to find out more and to find your book?
Well, his name is Ross Joseph, is the guy today, and he's launching his premiere tonight. It's called Impossible Dream.
I love it.
It's in one of the theaters here in London, and so I'll be leaving right after here to do that. And yeah, I'm very inspired. He's done an amazing job. And what he's done is he's taken people that you would least likely to ever imagine do something extraordinary with their life that went on to do something truly extraordinary. They're mind-blowing. And he's followed their lives and did documentaries on their lives. And this movie is amazing. It's inspiring. It's a tearjerker.
Fantastic. And where can people go to find your website, books, all that good stuff?
My stuff?
Yep.
All they have to do is go to drdemartini.com, DRDEMARTINI.com, drdemartini.com. They can go to the event calendar to see where I am speaking around the world, or my seminars like the Breakthrough Experience, which I'm coming up in Miami and then also in Phoenix and then Tokyo. Or they can go to my, look it on there online. I've got radios, television, newspapers, magazines, literally hundreds of these from around the world. And they can educate themselves. And there's written, inspired materials on there. And there's products on there. There's all kinds of things. It's an educational opportunity for people.
Fantastic. Thank you. Any last words of wisdom before maybe we have time for a very short exercise?
Well, the most important thing that I think a person can do is to give themselves permission to do something extraordinary on planet Earth. They desire to make a difference, and the greatest way to make a difference is be themselves, because that's what's unique. I always say the magnificence of who you are is far greater than any fantasy you'll ever impose on yourself. So you want to give yourself permission to be you and allow the magnificence of who you are to shine, as you call it, because we're not here to shrink. We're here to shine. We're not here to live in gravity. We're here to radiate. And I think that's we have to give ourselves permission to do it. So many people are comparing themselves to others instead of comparing their daily actions to their own dreams.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you have time for a really brief exercise?
Sure.
Go for it.
I'd like everybody to close their eyes for a moment and think about something that they're really grateful for. So their heart opens. Because gratitude is the key that opens up the gateway of the heart and allows love to come out. Love window washes the mind and allows it to become inspired, and it brings enthusiasm to the body. Just think of something you're grateful for. A person, a place, a thing, an opportunity. And when you enter into that world, then just kind of, with your eyes closed in a state of gratitude, go inward, and ask your innermost self, what are the highest priority actions I can do today that can help me fulfill my mission, my dream on planet Earth? And make that a daily ritual every day. Ask, what are the highest priority actions I can do? And keep it to just a few, no more than 7, probably 3 to 7 of the highest priority actions you can do that day that can help you fulfill your mission and your highest inspired dream on planet Earth. If you do that every single day and fill your day with high priority actions, it won't fill up with low priority distractions. Your self-worth will go up. Your fulfillment will go up. Your gratitude will go up. And when you're grateful for what you have, you get more to be grateful for. So that's the exercise for everybody to do every day.
Woohoo! Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Demartini, for being on the show. This has been absolutely fantastic. I really recommend everybody go out and get the Values Factor. Not only is there everything that he talked about and more in here, but there are exercises and there's places to fill in the blanks. So it really does help you get clear on your life. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get the Values Factor, and discover your own, and shine bright. Woohoo! Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was lovely.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!